Conjuring Last Rites hit theaters September 5th, and it is both the ninth installment in the franchise and it's an emotional finale for Ed and Lorraine's cinematic journey. Giving you the real upfront about this movie before we do a deep dive and really start getting into spoilers. And know that this is a solid franchise-ending film that plays to its fans, delivering atmosphere and tension that is a little closer to the original first two movies, while also providing homages and callbacks to bring all of its characters and universe to a satisfying ending, which is honestly something that a lot of horror franchises can't do. Halloween Ends. Is it a perfect movie? No. But of the Michael Chavez directed films in the franchise, this one is certainly the best in my opinion. I recommend for all horror fans to watch this, especially ones that are a fan of this franchise, and for all of you that have seen it, go ahead and comment down below what you thought of the movie and what is your final ranking of the Conjuring universe. And without further ado, you've been warned. Let's go ahead and do a deep dive and jump into spoilers right now. So the film taps into the 1986 alleged Smurl haunting in Pennsylvania. The film opens in 1964 with Ed and Lorraine Warren investigating an antique mirror. When Lorraine touches it, she immediately collapses into labor. Judy is born stillborn, but miraculously survives. Then you fast forward 22 years and you have the Smurl family. It consists of Jack and Janet, their daughters, and Jack's parents. After a creepy mirror arrives as a gift, pretty much everything goes haywire. Falling lights, disembodied voices, and all sorts of entities throughout the home. Judy, now an adult, gets entangled in the case. The mirror resurfaces, possession ensues, and in an intense climax, Ed, Lorraine, and Judy perform an exorcism, shattering the mirror and banishing the demon. The film closes with Judy's wedding. The guests are all familiar faces from the past and previous movies, and the movie ends with honoring the legacy of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and obviously we also get the real pictures of the Smurl family and some of the things that they had to endure. And that pretty much wraps up the plot of the movie. So for me, one thing that I've always appreciated about this franchise specifically, and any other franchises that happen to do this, is they really put an emphasis on having quality actors. And it's not even just getting the quality actors, it's also retaining them and having them be recurring characters throughout the franchise. The homages and the cameos of all people that you've seen in some of the previous movies, like, the officer that was in the original that, helped out with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and then the Asian guy that films for them to, capture some of the supernatural occurrences for them. Then, as I mentioned with the wedding, seeing the Perrin family and seeing the Hodgson family from the second one. It was just a really beautiful love letter to the franchise in a way. Now, realistically, would these people really be around like they're just lifelong friends? Probably not, but like I said, this movie was legit just fanfare, and anybody that's a fan of the franchise and just a fan of some of the families in these certain movies, I think that it was just a beautiful culmination in just having all those people there. So that's something I certainly can appreciate. And like I said, back to talking about the actors, like the girls in each of the movies, in the original Conjuring, whenever they seemed like they were scared, they were legit scared. Same thing with the second one. With this movie, you kind of feel a lot of the same ways, and even with the character Judy, for instance, Judy had been recast twice, and each of the times, including this movie that they did that, it worked seamlessly. I think that all three of the actresses that played Judy did a fantastic job, and they really added a lot of value to the films. As far as the story and the plot, I really like where they took it, because you have to think, with this being the last installment, you have to really consider like where you can go with your story. Like, how do you wrap all of this up? And I think that they did a good job. I liked it being focused on Judy and some of the things that she's experiencing and how they tie that back to the original. And it also kind of makes sense because it seems like, like especially with Annabelle Comes Home in that movie, how just all this stuff is always centered around Judy. And Judy has a lot of the same sort of psychic and clairvoyant abilities that her mother has. So just seeing that connection was really dope. And most of all, me personally, I just love that they kept it at basically being a haunted house movie. Like, I know, haunted house movies, it's like once you've seen one of them, you kind of seen them all. So I definitely get that. But there's something special about being uncomfortable in the place that you're supposed to be the most comfortable, which is your home. I think it was really nice with this case. This case blended in perfectly for what I would want to see, and they kept the movie pretty much at that. Yeah, you obviously see things outside of the home in certain scenes, and all that's perfectly fine. But yeah, the stuff that happens in the home, some pretty good stuff, can't even lie. This movie is just really well-rounded overall. There isn't really any true weaknesses to the movie, and that was something I was a little concerned with going into the movie, considering some of the other movies that Michael Chavez directed. So like The Curse of La Llorona, like that wasn't good. So I was like, oh my gosh, like please don't mess this up. And then he directed the Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, but he did a significantly better job this time. Just the continuity and how complex he made the scares this time in comparison to those two, it truly was a difference. There is no just cat jumping out of a bag type of jump scares or anything like that. There is some real genuine tension building. Now, would it have been better if James Wan did it? Absolutely it would have been, because the tension and the creativity when it comes to the scares in this movie versus any of the ones in the first two, it's not even really close. But like I said, it's closer. And that was one thing, like when I was watching the beginning of the movie, I didn't feel like this was a Conjuring movie. It was starting to feel kind of, I don't know, like kind of like dang near Halloween Ends. Not saying in terms, I'm not talking about the quality or anything like that, but in terms of, it kind of feels like it's a departure from the franchise that you know and love. But then when it gets to present day in the movie, which is about, I'd say probably 15 minutes in, then it's just like, okay, now this is starting to get that Conjuring feel back together, where you really focus on the families and the camaraderie. So you're doing a lot of character development and building, so you actually have a relationship with your characters. And then here comes these tension building scares, and so it did a pretty good job of maintaining being unsettling and eerie. And then of course the Conjuring loves to have a couple little moments of levity and some comedic value, but yeah, I mean overall it was just solid. But it's just the highs in this movie can't touch the highs. But really, it really can't touch anything on the first two. But it is just a really solid movie all around that does a very good job in closing the final chapter of the Warren story. And so with that being said, it is now rating time. I think that the movie was good. Technically, I think it would be probably about a 3 out of 5. I think that that's pretty solid. I think some of the things that it probably could have done better to sort of help it in that technical aspect and getting even closer to the original two is some of the CGI in the movie. It wasn't bad overall. The CGI was fine. But there were some scenes where it just kind of lingered on too long. And y'all know how I feel about when you're showing whatever the villain or the poltergeist or whatever your entity is. If you show them too long and you see too much of their face. Like, for instance, the entity that had the axe and was walking around. Super creepy. It was effective in some scenes, especially when I believe Lorraine was in the basement. And like you see the light flashing and it's like you see a half shadow of his face and going back and forth. That was good. But once again, it was just still on him too long. It's like, okay, cut the scene, just something, or cut away from his face and just show Lorraine's face and her being horrified by what she's looking at, as opposed to us seeing it as much. Little things like that. The old lady witch, seeing her in some scenes was kind of like I mean overall it was pretty good, but those are just some little things, if I had to nitpick, that could have made this movie better from a technical aspect. And then the ending also too, with the whole demise of the mirror, that could have been better as well. But it's nothing that I'm just trying to sit here and fault the movie for. I mean, like I said, we're nitpicking and you had to find a way to end this story, and so I'm not mad at them for doing it, but there probably are a couple other things that they could have done that would have made it better. And then from a how much I like it aspect, I think that I like this movie about, I'll say probably about another 4. So yeah, I know what y'all thinking. Yeah, another 7 out of 10. Yeah, it's accurate. That's just what it is. Now, as we get closer to the year end and then the year end review and sort of rank like the top 5 or top 10 movies of the year, then I will start really nitpicking and then start getting into, instead of, everything pretty much going up in increments of a half a point, then we'll start doing like, a quarter of a point. So then you can actually really see the delineation between some of these movies and some of their technical aspects, or how much I enjoy them. But anyway, that is all I have, Spooky Gang. Y'all comment down below what you thought of The Conjuring Last Rites, and do you think that it was a great conclusion to the Warren story and the whole Conjuring universe? Like I said, y'all drop that down below. For my Spooky Gang, y'all know how we rocking. Road to 10K subs. If you're new to the channel, go ahead, subscribe. Now that this whole Conjuring universe is over, we'll get back to more of the other things that we like to talk about. Might get back into the decades of horror, you just never know. Until next time, Spooky Gang, y'all stay blessed and y'all stay spooky.